Here's the thing. For everybody listening, don't make the same mistake the Bengals just did in any facet of your life.
People are going to get hurt. It's the hockey season. And if they want to make the deep run to the playoffs, they're going to need players. And Ben Hutton's a good defenseman that can help.
I don't think they will. If they don't have Anthony Davis, I'm saying it right now. If Anthony Davis is out for the playoffs, they don't make it out of the first round.
I was very tempted to just put defense.
What about the Jared Cook play on the sideline? And then Mason Crosby's 55-yard field goal or something like that. That was a good one.
Come on, Austin and I've been saying this ever since Joe Burrow got injured.
I just do not see Harden putting in the same amount of effort into each game. And I honestly believe that's why he hasn't won a championship yet.
That's a perfect name. What you said, name brand players. Like, it's not the great value Target brand toilet paper or whatever. It's the Charmin Ultra Strong.
I swear we didn't script that.
Fultz is injured and he really hasn't lived up to the potential of being the number one overall pick when he was selected by the Sixers.
Like you said, Ovechkin, he's getting older. He hasn't been playing as well as I imagined. He's one of the greatest goal scorers of all time, but he hasn't started off this season as hot as I would hope.
How is Joe Burrow going to get the ball to them if his butt is already on the ground and he finally decides who to throw to?
I don't really think the Dodgers are going to make the World Series this year. I feel like they'll make it to the NLCS.
And then I want to talk about the Fernando Tatis extension because that really surprised me. Because he's so young. You see the Chiefs beefing up their O-line, and then you have the Buccaneers beefing up their defensive line.
Ingrained in the life of Tom Brady and what winning actually looks like, I think will be a very good move for Bruce Arians and this Bucs organization.
Hi, I'm Jeff Allen, and you're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our 91st episode. Today we will be talking about teams that are Super Bowl or bust. Given how we felt about some teams, we separated them in two tiers. But before we get into that, make sure to check out our last episode, which was episode 90, where we talked about predicting the success of each new NBA coach. And just so happens that two of the teams that got new head coaches were both Austin's and my favorite teams. So make sure to hear how we feel about those moves and who we think will have the best season as a coach out of the 9 people. So make sure to go check that out. But today we're going to be discussing teams that are Super Bowl or bust. Let's start with tier 1, where these teams are definitely Super Bowl or bust. Austin, I'll let you clarify it more.
So Super Bowl or bust means win the Super Bowl or it's a bad season. We've had multiple teams on this before. Last year we had the Bucs and they ended up winning. So they took the desperation that we felt they had to have, and it worked out for them. Now this year we do not have the Bucs in the category of Super Bowl or bust, which may be a surprise for some people because Tom Brady's age, but he did sign a new contract extension to make sure that he will be on the team next season. So when we get to the next tier list, you'll hear where we have them. But first, I mean, this is definitely a team that I think is Super Bowl or bust, and we talked about it before. The Kansas City Chiefs. We saw the additions that they had to the offensive line. They made some trades. They signed some guys. They took Kyle Long out of retirement. And obviously they lost in the Super Bowl last year. What are your thoughts on the Chiefs, Kevin?
Yeah, given how they lost the Super Bowl, losing 31-9, that's definitely not how I predicted it, as I had them winning the Super Bowl, and I definitely would have just anticipated a much closer game. And it was really because of their offensive line due to the injuries, which is something that's what forced me to make them Super Bowl or bust, because you go get Orlando Brown from the Ravens. You spend big money on Joe Thuney to get him away from the Patriots. You draft 2 offensive line, Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. Then you cut, but even before that, they cut Mitchell Schwartz and, Eric Fisher, their number 1 overall pick, which was a big sign of them changing the guard. But they still have only 3, but the third one has an asterisk. Nick Allegretti was a guard last year that started. He's probably not going to be the starter. Then you also have Duvernay Tardif coming back, but that's what he's the guy that has an asterisk for me because he opted out because he's a doctor, so he was helping. He was on the front lines with COVID. And then you have Mike Remmers, who I believe is now taking the starting role as right tackle. He filled in. But that's something that they really fixed. And then, Austin, you also pointed this out when we were talking about them earlier. This is the final year of the rookie contract of Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and they're gonna have big issues trying to sign free agents later or to give extensions to guys like Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce or any of their other great players. So we'll have to see what they do about that. The next team on our list is a team that had some issues re-signing their QB or getting them to come back to camp, we should say. A team that made it far last year and lost by less points to the Buccaneers than the Chiefs did. I think you know where we're going with this. The Green Bay Packers. I think they're one of the best teams in the league. I think they had the best wide receiver in the league, even though I know you disagree with that. I think they have one of the best running tandems in the league with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. They also have a great cornerback in Jair Alexander, but because of the situation with Aaron Rodgers, how he thinks the team isn't being run well, maybe a Super Bowl will get him to stay long term. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I will agree. Devontae Adams is probably my number 2. I just defer to DeAndre Hopkins. And to talk about Devontae Adams, he is also in the final year. He has yet to sign an extension. And so you have that big pair of Rodgers and Adams. And given how y'all have been to back-to-back NFC championships, but the latest one you performed much better than when you faced the 49ers. So, and given the Aaron Rodgers situation, it is definitely Super Bowl or bust. And because even to go for Matt LaFleur, this is his third year. Like, I don't think there's any trouble for him, but he's got to get to the Super Bowl. And yeah, so Super Bowl or bust, as Rodgers and Adams are calling it last dance. I like to think of it as last chance. Any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I fully understand that. However, unlike Last Dance, I feel like if Rodgers wins the Super Bowl, he will return. Do you disagree with that or no?
You know what? You and I had talked about it like way earlier when the Rodgers drama was happening, and how I thought he was going to definitely get traded, and how the Packers should have traded him. I just don't know anymore. So I think no matter what, he still leaves, but I don't even think Rodgers knows what he's going to do next season, if that makes sense. So I think he doesn't, but I can't really predict what he's going to do. I don't even think the front office can. Do you agree with that?
Uh, sort of. I feel like the front office trusts that if they win a Super Bowl, they'll bring him back. And the reason why is that he said it wasn't a money issue. And if it's not a money issue, it's a winning issue. And if you win a Super Bowl, you can't do much winning than that. So I feel like he'll be like, okay, we have a team that can go out and do it again. And I feel like Devontae will also resign. They'll be able to keep key guys like Mercedes Lewis, who's a very underrated tight end. Obviously, they have offensive linemen that keep on leaving to go to quote unquote greener pastures. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do if Rodgers decides to come back and run it back if they do end up winning.
And then just before we move on, I think the more important signing is Devontae Adams. Because is Jordan Love time? It's not definitely year 3. You would still defer to Rodgers, but if you lose Rodgers, you have Jordan Love. You really need to have one of the best wide receivers, possibly the best for him. I think that would make great. That would be a great sign for Jordan Love to have a established guy, and then you also have some young comers. You have Robert Tonyan, the tight end, the Van Scantling, and then Lazard, and then you also have Rodgers, the wide receiver from Clemson. So I think that would give a great wide receiver group to a young QB, and we saw what a great wide receiver group has done to a young QB. Let's just look at Patrick Mahomes. I think that's the ideal scenario that the GM for the Packers was thinking. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's Valdez Scantling, but yeah, MVS is one of the best wide receivers on deep passes. He had the most, I think, 50-yard touchdowns in the league besides Tyreek Hill, which I mean, I don't think anybody's going to have more than Tyreek Hill because all they do is throw bombs to him. But the fact that he, I think, had 6 50+ yard touchdowns, and he obviously had one against the Bucks too. He's a great young wide receiver, and I think it'll definitely help to take the pain off of him or the guarding off of him if they make sure that they can keep Devontae Adams. But I feel like we can move on to the next team. This is a team that lost their starting center and had a blowout loss when it probably shouldn't have been against the Browns in the playoffs. And we're obviously talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is definitely a Super Bowl contender in my eyes. I feel like people are giving way too much hate towards Ben Roethlisberger, looking at all the picks he threw when he was just trying to throw the ball down the field to get as many points as possible. Most people don't see the 500 yards and 5 touchdowns; they only see the 5 picks. So I think this team is Super Bowl bust definitely because of their QB situation. I don't really trust any of the backups, Mason Rudolph or anybody else on their team, and this is really the last chance for their wide receiver core and their defense, which is one of the best in the league, to get it done with this core.
Yeah, I'm more on the side of I think Roethlisberger, Father Time is definitely coming after Roethlisberger, and we saw peaks of it, or hints of it last year. So that's how I feel about him. And this is a team where the owner has even stated we need to get back to our run game, and they draft Najee Harris. And I didn't know this till someone mentioned it. They only have one returning offensive line member of that offensive line, so they're trying to fix that. So they also have Juju. I think he signed a 1 year contract, or did he resign for a couple of years?
Uh, I never looked at the term. I just know he resigned. I didn't see the term on the deal. You can look that up real quick.
Okay, I'm looking that up. So that's a key thing for me. And I agree with you. I'm not confident in Dwayne Haskins or Mason Rudolph. So I kind of see there being of a drop off, or maybe they go sign someone in the offseason or trade. Um, because I believe this is the final year of Ben Roethlisberger, which is a key thing of this needs to be this. They need to make the Super Bowl, and given how they lost to the Browns in the fashion that they did, they really need to make it to the Super Bowl to please many people like me. Any other thoughts before we move on to tier two?
Yeah, another thing that most people don't consider is that I think they'll be pretty good in the Super Bowl if they make it. Most people don't realize how good of a defense the Steelers have because of how they ended off the season giving up so many points to the Browns. But we've seen defenses take care of many teams' offenses in the Super Bowl. We saw that with the Bucks this past year. We saw it with the Patriots in 2018. Big plays are always made on defense. So I feel like if this team could get to a Super Bowl, they could really wreak some havoc on any NFC team that steps in their path.
Also, the Juju Smith was a 1 year, $8 million contract with a signing bonus of 7 million. So he is another key thing because he's their number one wide receiver.
Yeah, definitely. So I feel like we move on to the next tier, a new tier in ours, and it's a tier we like to call "Can't Take a Step Back." Um, and that doesn't mean make it to the same place. Like, for example, the Bucks are on this list, and we'll explain in further detail later on. But you'll be like, oh, if they lose at all, it'd be a step back. No, it's how they lose. If they make it to the conference championship, I don't necessarily think that's a step back, especially with how these teams are. The Bucks are not going to be playing as desperate, in my opinion, especially since Tom Brady is still under tenure next season. So next year, there'll definitely be a Super Bowl or bust, whether or not they win a Super Bowl this year. Um, and so these are teams that can't take a step back, and we'll need to see them make improvements, but not necessarily win a Super Bowl. So the first team, we'll just go right into it. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the reigning Super Bowl champions. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, they brought back every single starter from that Super Bowl team, so they have to, if they make it to a conference finals, conference championship, to stick in football terms, then it's a win. But they definitely need to make a prolonged run in the playoffs, just given the success they had last season. And they're a team I think that really goes off to a hot start if you listen to our early predictions for the NFL. Any more thoughts to add?
Yeah, I mean, most people look at Tampa and they're like, oh, they're old. They obviously have a lot of older guys on their offense and their defense, like Rob Gronkowski. Does he retire after the season? We don't really know how long he's going to be staying in the NFL. It doesn't even matter how long. If he signs an extension worth many years, there's no guarantee he's going to stick through that. So I feel like for some of these guys, it may be their last season. However, because you have Tom Brady, it does not mean it's their last chance to win a Super Bowl.
If we want to crown a team with the name Last Dance, this should be the team because of the uncertainty surrounding Chris Godwin. He is on the franchise tag, and given how you're paying people, this may be his last time as a wide receiver for the Buccaneers. We don't really know. I also think Fournette and McCoy re-signed for 1 year. I'll look up McCoy. I'm very sure Fournette signed.
Fournette did.
Okay.
I don't know about McCoy.
Okay, I'll look up McCoy. So you can add anything else.
Yeah, I fully understand this being a last dance for this team. And for many of them, it's going to feel like a Super Bowl or bust season. However, for the Bucks organization, I don't think it is. This is more of a situation like the Spurs in 2003. David Robertson was going to retire. And so they're like, okay, for the Admiral, we need to win a championship. And they do. And that doesn't mean the Spurs are done winning, but it was like a last dance field. They were going to lose Steve Kerr. They were going to lose many of their older guys on that 1999 team and the 2003 team that won two NBA championships there. But it doesn't mean that their run is done. They obviously won in 2005, 2007, 2014. So just because you have your last dance with a certain core of guys does not mean that your reign of terror on the league comes to an end.
And LaShawn McCoy is a free agent, but the big player I think is Fournette because Fournette was more impactful than LaShawn McCoy in the Super Bowl, from what I remember of that Super Bowl. They also, I think, re-signed Sue. So I think we've talked enough. Let's go to the second team, which is the Rams. And they traded away Jared Goff, and you get Matthew Stafford, which I think is an upgrade because I think we've seen a regression ever since that Super Bowl trip by Jared Goff. Maybe it's because his team started to figure out to pressure him with the run game. So just stack the box and force him to throw, and he lost his running back. Not Melvin Ingram, Melvin Gordon. But with Matthew Stafford, he's a guy that can sling the ball. He's a guy Rodgers talked about has been underrated, especially in Detroit. So pairing him up with an offensive guru like McVay, I think will be a key thing for their success. But given how it takes time, even Rodgers, I'm just going to keep referencing Rodgers, how he talked about how it took him some time to get used to the floor. Even Tom Brady mentioned it. So did Peyton Manning, how it took time to get used to their new teammates. So we'll see that with the Rams. But they definitely have to make the playoffs. And like we said with the Bucks, I think if they make the conference championship, it's a win for them. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, 100% agreed. Because it's his first season, Matthew Stafford, I'm talking about, with this team, I definitely understand why most people think of it as a Super Bowl or bust. They're obviously adding to a team that's been to the Super Bowl once before and back in 2018, and obviously they still have a great defense, cornered by Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. But again, it's the first year with a new QB, and that doesn't always work out like Tom Brady's did. We've seen multiple times where a new QB goes there and he struggles a little bit, and then he gets his uh, stuff going, and then he eventually wins the Super Bowl. We kind of saw that with Peyton Manning back with the Broncos. The Broncos obviously lost to the Super Bowl and to the Seahawks and ended up winning a couple years later. So it doesn't always mean that you're going to be necessarily out of it if you lose your first year with a great team around a star QB. But the Rams are definitely a team with Andrew Whitworth, who signed a contract to come back next season, and I think he's looking at it in the same way I am, where this year isn't necessarily Super Bowl or bust, but next year definitely is.
And then one more thing about to make that argument for the Matthew Stafford trade, you traded 2 first-round picks. So you have not had a pick since the Jared Goff pick. And you trade Jared Goff, who is a former number one overall draft pick, and a third round pick to the Lions for Stafford. That is a huge amount. Those are some valuable assets. So I think that's why you can make the argument of how they're in this second tier. But given the year one of Matthew Stafford, they're not in this first tier just yet. And I think we can look at Whitworth contract situation, same thing as Tom Brady. Both are older in football terms. So they still have one more year. So that's why key pieces to that offense are just they have another year, so it's not exactly Super Bowl or bust. That's why in the second tier. Now we can move on to the final team that we'll talk about, who's in our second tier. I'll let you announce them, Austin.
Yeah, so the last team here is a team that's won a Super Bowl while this quarterback's been with them. They also lost to a Super Bowl. We're talking about the Seattle Seahawks with Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll. They kind of took a step back last season. Most people did not see them losing as early as they did, and that left many teams surprised about what happened with the Seahawks season, and they have a lot of questions about them. Jamal Adams is on the last year of his deal, Dwayne Brown also. So they have a lot of guys that are that may leave afterwards, and so they have to at least show improvement this year to at least attract a re-signing from Jamal Adams and crew, and make sure that next year they can sign free agents to help them on a Super Bowl or bust season next year.
And given, like we talked about the Rodgers drama, there was drama with Russell Wilson, even though Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson have both denied that there was drama of Russell Wilson being traded. Dwayne Brown is another key piece because he is on the older side, and he's one of the only good offensive linemen the Seahawks have, and they parted with their offensive coordinator because they weren't running the ball as much, and their defense struggled last season, Jamal Adams being one of them. And as he dealt with some injury problems, and they gave up some valuable assets. I believe it was 2 number ones, first round picks to the Jets. Am I correct, Austin?
That sounds right. I think it was 2.
Yeah, it was for 2 firsts, and I think they also traded the safety. I'm trying to think of that guy's name. They traded a safety in it too. They traded safety Bradley McDougall.
That's right.
And then, so they gave up a lot of assets for Jamal Adams. And so it's going to be a big season for them where they should make a deep run. So that's all I can think about. They also just extended Tyler Lockett. So that's a key thing. Any more thoughts on the Seahawks?
Yeah, so the Seahawks are definitely a team that has underperformed lately, and in many other seasons as well. And I know they're hoping that they rebound, and they're really going to need it in free agency. Many teams, players have not been interested in the Seahawks. They want to go to the Bucks or the Chiefs or the Packers or other places that they know are going to be really contenders. And when they see the Seahawks continuously lose in the first or second round of the playoffs, it makes it a lot more dissatisfying to go there. So a big season this year, not taking a step back, making it to the conference championship, I think would be a huge win for this organization.
Yeah, and if last season's free agency moves serve as a prequel to what could happen, New England could be a place that teams want to go to because they are willing to spend money, which is a surprising thing. But I think that concludes our episode. Any final thoughts, Austin?
No, I'm excited to see next season, and it's going to be a very interesting year. The first year was 17 games, so we'll see if that causes more injuries or not.
Yeah, especially given how they actually weren't that affected. I'm thinking of just the NBA and NHL. The NFL basically started on time. It wasn't like a rush schedule, but I'm also excited to see how our picks turn out in the early predictions, where we talked about our Super Bowl predictions. So make sure to check that out. And to talk about interview alumni, Make sure to check out the Jeff Allen interview, as on there he announced his podcast, which it's some great insight with Michael DeVito. If you go to the KC Sports Network YouTube page and find One-on-One with Jeff Allen and Mike DeVito, that is his podcast, and he is talking a lot about their offensive line and how he expects a big season. Or I haven't fully listened, but from what I'm seeing on his Twitter page is he is a huge fan of Trey Smith from Tennessee, who was one of the guys they drafted. So make sure to check out that interview and to also learn about Jeff Allen's career and then also his cookie business, or his cookie business with his wife, that got a Super Bowl that NBA Finals commercial, which, and Austin and I have both had those cookies, and we are not sponsored. Delicious cookies. We even said on the interview, best cookies out there. So make sure to check that interview out, and check out all the other interviews, and to be on the lookout for our next episode where we will talk about NHL offseason and where there are some big moves. So thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions.